Welcome to the MYS Virtual Hangout. Here's your host, MYS Music Director, Raul Gomez.
Good afternoon and welcome to the MYS Virtual Hangout number 57. It's Thursday, October 22nd, and my guest this afternoon is Seare Farhat. Seare is a composer who recently started his master's degree at the Jacobs School of Music at Indiana University. And Seare is also one of 5 composers that the Metropolitan Youth Symphony has commissioned as part of the Youth Orchestra Commissioning Initiative, along with the Portland Youth Philharmonic and the New Jersey Symphony. Seare finished his bachelor's in music composition and math last year at Oberlin Conservatory, and he is currently, while at Indiana University, he is the assistant director of their new music ensemble. Seare, welcome to the MYS Virtual Hangout.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time. So where are you joining us from? Where in the world are you, first of all?
I'm in Bloomington, Indiana, which is a new place for me. I just moved here for my master's at IU.
Okay, you have been there for just a few months then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful campus. I've been there many times. I didn't go to IU, but I visited a lot. And a very dear violin teacher of mine who taught me during my master's, now he teaches there. Kevork Matarosian. I'm sure you'll run into him if you haven't yet.
Oh, yeah.
But have you had a chance to enjoy the campus and the facilities? I mean,
Definitely, yeah. I'm actually pretty grateful that I'm the assistant director of NME, the new music ensemble here. So I've had the opportunity to organize a lot of chamber groups because per COVID regulations, we can only have groups of less than 7. So it's kind of my job to set up these rehearsals that are on the big opera stage to spread everybody out. So I get to go hang out in the opera stage pretty much every week.
that is very cool. So
Yeah.
you're not limited to online only rehearsals. You're able to do in-person stuff.
Exactly. I'm very grateful for that too. And like you said, the campus is amazing. There's woods everywhere, so I go on walks and just take in all of the limestone that's here.
Yeah, yeah, very cool. And you, of course, are one of 5 composers that the Metropolitan Youth Symphony commissioned for the Youth Orchestra Commissioning Initiative, which is a partnership with the Portland Youth Philharmonic and the New Jersey Symphony. So we're very excited to play your music, which I think we're gonna be recording in March, I think. So I think our the musicians in our most advanced orchestra are gonna be saying your name quite a lot in the next few months. So we're excited about that. But I'm curious, so how did you get started in composition? But if we go even further back in time in music.
Hmm. That's an answer that I think takes a lot of explaining. Yeah. So I grew up in a very not musical family, except for my dad. My mom, my brother, and my sister, they're all tone deaf. But my dad, he has such an amazing gift for just picking things out of the air. He, as we say in Farsi, that his hand just picks things up out of nowhere. So he was never trained as a musician, but if you give him any instrument and a day, he'll figure it out. So when we were kids, my mom found this first act guitar, and me and my brother just loved playing around with it. My dad started teaching us folk songs that he knew and he loved, and because of that like amazing property he had, I just picked up a ton of things from the recordings we would listen to. It wasn't until I got into middle school that I actually started studying music. I became a trumpet player. So from then, from my childhood, I was really only a folk musician. I played Afghan music with my uncles, and so that's about it.
And trumpet was your first like Western instrument or like.
Yeah, so trumpet was my first Western instrument. My first instrument totally was the harmonium, which my dad got after he saw that I was really enjoying music. He got me an harmonium because he kind of wanted more music in the house anyway. So,
And where was this all happening? Where in the world were you guys then?
I was born and raised in Hampton, Virginia.
Okay.
So a little small beach town off the coast of Southern Virginia.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
were your parents, did they migrate here, or was there a generation before them that was already in the US?
Yeah. So my mom and dad both came from Afghanistan. They took a stop in Pakistan before they got their student visas,
Mm,
but landed at Hampton University in Hampton, and
mm,
we lived there ever since.
cool. Okay.
And that was
Okay.
about in the 1980s, late 1980s.
Okay. But it sounds like growing up in your house, I mean, the African culture was very much central to your experience.
Definitely, yeah. I think that we had this little isolated life. There
Mm,
were four other Afghan families within a 30-mile radius. And so, because Virginia is kind of sparse in Southern Virginia, so we would go take turns going 30 miles north to all gather in one house, then stay in Hampton 30 miles south to go to another house. So it was definitely all about trying to like fabricate this village community of Awana in America.
yeah, yeah, wow. And growing up and like at home, you spoke Farsi and those families also.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
You speak English with your siblings, but Farsi with your parents?
Yeah. So when I was a kid, we definitely spoke Farsi to each other all the time,
Yeah.
everyone in the family. But as we grew older and went through school, like some of the ideas we were trying to express, it just didn't work. We wanted to talk
Mm,
about politics and things, and so English was the language for that. At this point, I only speak Farsi to my parents,
sure.
but I definitely speak English to my siblings. And so I'm definitely grateful for that, the time when I was a kid where it was just so insular that we only spoke Farsi, but now it's just too hard. I don't
Right.
think I have the vocabulary for politics and things like that that I need to talk about.
Sure, sure. Wow. So trumpet and what happened next? I mean, when did you start creating music?
Yeah. So I started writing pop songs and kind of like things like that when I was really young. And this is kind of like maybe the worst confession to make. I was such a fan of Christina Aguilera and Britney Spears. I would put on their videos on VHS and I would just try and dance like them and be like them.
Sure. Yeah. No, I don't think that's an embarrassing confession at all. I mean,
Oh,
I was also way into them and their music, and I do think there's a lot of great pop music that came, from the late 90s, early 2000s.
I mean, I think so too, for sure. I loved everything that they did, and I kind of wanted to be them.
Uh-huh,
So I
uh-huh.
started writing music like that. So I actually didn't keep on with trumpet. Uh, I became a percussionist in high school,
Mm,
and that kind of took me into my first 2 years of college. But I didn't start composing until I was in my senior year of high school. And the thing that kind of got me turned on to that was I was in a theory class that was just like a part of an elective in my high school, and we listened to The Rite of Spring, and something about that, and I don't really exactly understand what it was that appealed to me so much about
mm,
that. I didn't like Bach at the time or Brahms, any of the like people in the classic repertoire of Western music. I just wasn't turned on to it. But when I heard that Stravinsky, I was just immediately like amazed by the possibilities of classical music. And after that point, I was just like pretty much I mean, like I called it composing then, but I was pretty much copy and pasting from like Petrushka and things like that, thinking I could write for a symphony orchestra. But it's what propelled me into writing more. I went to Hampton University after that for the first 2 years, thinking I was going to become a doctor. But after 2 years of being there, studying percussion as well, I just decided to kind of go for it. And with my MIDI recordings and like this 50-minute violin concerto that probably doesn't sound very good and should never be performed, I submitted my portfolio to Oberlin, and uh, I guess Stephen Harkey, Elizabeth Organic, and Jesse Jones saw something in me, and I am eternally grateful
man.
because it's changed my life.
And what a school to go to for composition. I mean, such fertile grounds, I think, for exploration. I just love what's going on at Oberlin. But you also did math. You did like a double degree, right?
Hmm. Yeah. So math is a huge part of my life, actually. My family is entirely STEM people. So my dad, he in Afghanistan, he was a physicist, and when he came here, he also continued his physics research, but taught as a math professor. My mom also studied mathematics and then ended up as a contractor for the government when she moved here. So math kind of runs in my blood. It's almost like the language that I use to like describe everything in my world. And so that continues to still be a part of my life. This semester, I'm taking a topology course, and so I don't think I can get rid of it. I'll never really stop thinking about it.
And what's the relationship between math and music in your writing, if any?
I think I'm seeing that more and more lately, actually. As When I was younger, it was mostly intuitive. My musical sense was very much emotional, and I separated that from my math sense. But then at some point, it completely flipped. I thought that math was all about emotions and intuition. You had to write these proofs out of nowhere, trying to convince someone that you can construct a polygon out of like a compass and a string. But then in music, you have to write music that's compelling and makes sense. There's a formula to it. But I think as I started growing older, I realized that the two are really similar pursuits. That they both have this sense of individual emotional connection, but also need that kind of starting point that is based on sets and ideas that are like out of some kind of harmonic language. And those prescribed like formulas and languages that exist within music and math, I think, are the most interesting part of both fields to me.
Yeah, man, and I think also that there's such beauty and just kind of like awe in the universality of both,
Hmm.
right? Because when you think about, you know, if you think about the fact that you could explain the whole universe through math and how like from the subatomic level to the cosmos, like everything can be explained by uh, formulas basically, and then you think about how music and what it communicates also kind of goes beyond any kind of language that we can think of. Like to me, that intersection is really exciting. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
Definitely, yeah. I totally agree, and I think that um, I think music is more powerful than math, and in my opinion, I think music can say the things that math can't, and say the things that math can too.
Sure.
Um, so that's why I think I chose music in the end, was because and I'm like, my brother makes fun of me. He's like, "Oh, you're not smart anymore because you stopped math," and I say, you're not smart anymore because you stopped music." So.
Wow, very cool. Those pop songs you wrote back in the early 2000s, were you like also kind of like producing them or recording them on a computer the- or
Um, So I didn't have a computer back then, but I had a little Casio keyboard, and I would just kind of like bang on it and sing some like really emotional lyrics about love and loss, even though I hadn't ever experienced those things before. Um, yeah.
do you are there recordings of this or do you remember them? Like I'm not gonna ask you to do it, don't worry. But like could you like sit at a piano and like perform one of them?
Oh, I don't think so. I think it's been forever since then. I think both I don't remember it, and I've like really blocked it out of my mind.
Do you have any current favorite producers or creators of pop or hip hop or kind of that world of like studio production work?
Definitely. I really love a few artists. Flying Lotus is a new discovery for me. I really love his work, and also Lian La Havas. She just has an immense like compilation of different sounds that she does. Not sure that she produces her own work, but she definitely makes some amazing music. That and Tom York from Radiohead. I just
Sure.
love his stuff as well.
You know, one thing I'd love to do, and maybe we can do this later. I would love to ask you to send me a playlist that I could share with MYS students of stuff that's not necessarily within the classical orchestral world that they could listen to. That'd be really
Definitely,
fun. So maybe we can add that to the description of this video when we publish this Hangout. That'd be super fun.
definitely.
Cool. Okay. You sent us a video of a piece that you wrote that I'm very excited to share with our viewers. So would you mind introducing that sort of briefly, and then we'll watch it, and then we can talk about it in more depth.
So the piece is called Chishman, and the video that I sent to you is just the third movement of it. It's a 15-minute long piece for fixed video, audio, and a really eclectic ensemble, actually. It's got a woodwind quintet, trumpet, trombone, and 3 double basses in it. So it's really got this kind of like spectral feeling to it, where it's got a lot of low and a little bit of a high. And the piece itself has a lot of snippets from old VHS recordings of my family. My dad took a lot of these random videos, and so the piece is constructed in that way. The musical material is kind of like these collections of random melodic fragments, and the video also is just these collections of random memories. And it feels kind of like I want to pull the audience into this narrative of looping through memory and finding yourself lost in reminiscing.
Very cool. All right, let's take a listen. So I think that's so cool, and I think it's such a compelling piece. And it just, the video part of it also just, I'm curious like, how the idea to create this piece came about. Like, was the video come first, and then the audio? Like, how was it born?
Yeah. So the video did come first. I have always been fascinated by these old home videos that we have. We always watch them. We kind of like have made it a tradition in my family to watch them. But the aspects that I find more interesting than just watching it and kind of saying, "Oh, this is like what we looked like back then," is that my dad was weirdly fixated on random objects. Like he would take, I know, 20-minute video that's supposed to be about our family. He'd zoom up on a tree for like 3 of the minutes, and then he'd like go over to a curtain and like zoom up into that. So I asked him one day like, why are you recording curtains and trees? And my mom like kind of got mad at him when I asked that. She was like, yeah, we only have these videos of our kids' childhood. Why would you be doing that? And he just said Chishman gasht, which means my eye wandered there. I just wanted to look at that. And so he had the camera, so he had the power to do so. And something about that, just that phrase, Chishman gasht, my eye wandered, feels really similar to the way that I have felt about my like introspection about my life as just finding my identity in America. It's like I think that identity is really just a construction that you make. You build all of the little parts of your culture that you pick up from other people and other languages and music. And so just like my dad kind of like was drawn to recording a tree or a curtain, I feel like who I am today is just that, except with the bank of memories that I have in my brain. So this, yeah, that's a long-winded way of saying that I constructed it with just compiling all of these videos that I found really interesting that my dad didn't focus on us at all for, and made music to it after.
I think that's very cool. How did you come up with the instrumentation for it?
Yeah. So I wanted this kind of spectral, really like low bass and high winds, but really light in volume. So I had this. The first thing I composed was this little snippet of chords that you heard in the beginning of the video. It's just three double basses playing in fifths, and then the rest of the instruments are in this kind of like spectral spacing all the way up the range, from high piccolo to like the lowest notes on the bass. And so this really heavy moving chords, I just was really interested in what possibilities that could make. And also just the eclectic timbres. Like the double bass sounds so different and acts so uniquely than the trombone or the flute, and to put them all together kind of fit with this feeling that I have about myself, that I'm just like this random mashup of different cultures.
Yeah, and there are some references to what sounds like maybe folk songs here, right? Are these African folk songs that we're hearing, or snippets
Yeah.
of?
So right at the end, there's a fixed audio of this piece that's done by many people. It's called Dazamo Zeba Watan, which is in Pashto, another national language of Afghanistan. And so the piece is it's kind of like the folk anthem of Afghanistan. Dazamo Zeba Watan means this is my homeland. And so in the recording that I include at the end of this, it's panned around my family. Those six of us, that's my entire world when I was a kid. And so the singer, he says, "Da'asamul zeba watan, da'asamul zeba watan." But right before at the end, he says, "Dawatan de da," and then what the word that would come after that, before it gets cut off, is Afghanistan. So that word, he says, my nation, my homeland is Afghanistan. And so by cutting that off, I kind of wanted to express that it's not Afghanistan. It's like view of like a little insular family that you see like opening Christmas gifts of all things, like this Afghan family who didn't know about Christmas when they were in Afghanistan. Like it's not Afghan, and it's not necessarily American. We didn't celebrate Christmas for the same reasons that others might have, but at the same time, there is this like I do feel nationality and pride to my family and my culture.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so I think that's such a beautiful way of looking at what home means and how that relates to one's identity, right? I grew up in Costa Rica. I didn't come to the U.S. until I was in my early 20s for my master's, and I've been in the U.S. for now close to 15 years or 16 years. And when I see my daughter, who's I mean, she's not even 2 years old, and she interacts with my parents through video calls. And right now we're spending a little time in Georgia with my wife's parents, so her grandparents, and it's just so it makes me think a lot about identity and what home means, and how at the core of that there's family, right? And I just love what you're saying about all the different kind of snippets of memories and all these things that accumulate to create who you are, right? And it's something that's always growing and always changing and always evolving. And and music, what a great way to explore that, right?
Hmm. Right. I totally agree. I think like people say that smell is the best way to evoke memories and like bring you back to a
Sure.
specific feeling. But I also feel like um, music with video, those two in combination also have this really poignant way of bringing you back to some sort of
Mm.
like other world that you used to live in.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I want to ask you about that. You have collaborated with filmmakers and visual and performance artists and poets too. I'm curious as to what has attracted you to those collaborations, and if you have anything in the works right now that involves other art forms.
Yeah. So mostly I think those collaborations stemmed from friendships. I think like for me, music, and maybe it's because of the way I came into it, is very much a collaborative effort.
Mm.
It doesn't exist without people. You can't, for me at least, I can't just sit in a room and write music for music's sake. I have to have someone in mind. So most of the pieces that I've written in my life have been with this kind of like image of who might play it, or who I'm writing for, and how I might interact with them and learn from them. And so with those other medias, I would always consult them and work together with them. Right now, I'm actually working on a woodwind quintet that's going to have an associated video, and we're just starting to get into like the ideas of creating a program for it, like a storyline for it, and that is really inspiring to me to be able to. It's all about the pandemic and all about the social justice that we've seen over the summer, and again, taking these aspects of people's lives and uh, taking that as an inspiration to get to know these musicians through music, and then being able to display to an audience how I've gotten to know them, and like essentially represent through music my relationship with these people, and to share our shared experiences is what I really live for in collaboration.
Very cool. Um, I want to ask you about the art on your wall, if you don't mind, the things that I
Yeah,
see behind you. So what do we have there?
totally. As you can see right here, this actually is a set that I've curated. So when I was in Oberlin, we had these things called free boxes, and one time someone left their sketchbook just there for some studio art class, and they left a ton of like really vague abstract sketches of figures, and I loved them, and I put them all over my walls. And This is just a Japanese print by Utagawa Harushige, and another one, a drawing by a friend of a
Yeah.
fish, and two paintings by my brother. I really love the idea of curating these tiny little artworks that really mean a lot to me and have a huge story. And so whenever I just kind of like am in my room, I'm surrounded by these like warm memories and people that I love.
So I guess the person whose sketchbook you found, they never knew you got it. They don't know you have it, or that you put their stuff everywhere, right?
Exactly, right. And they had no name written in it. And so I kind of like the idea of maybe one day I'll get to know this person or somehow get in contact with them and say, "Hey, you're a famous artist to me. I really love your work."
Very cool. Yeah. Yeah. Again, it takes me back to what you were saying about those, vignettes and those scenes, and you're surrounding yourself with images that bring you something, right, in your just daily life, but also maybe in your art. Very cool. Okay, so before we go any further, there is a game that we play at the MYS Virtual Hangouts, and that is the Two Truths and a Lie game. And you sent three statements that now I am going to try and guess which one is your lie. Okay, and so I'm gonna go to this screen here, and I'm just gonna read them out loud for folks who are watching. So statement A is that you, Seare, you're colorblind. Statement B is that you're a vegetarian. And statement C is that you had a bird named Bird. Okay, so let's see. So you and I just met, right? Like this is our first conversation. We've corresponded by email because of the commission, but that's about it. So I don't have a lot to work with except for what we have talked about, what I've read about you, and the music that I've heard that you've created. Okay, so I'm gonna start by guessing one of your truths, and maybe I'll be wrong, and that's the end of the game. But I am going to say that statement C, you had a bird named Bird, is true.
It is. Yeah.
Good. Yes.
I did have a bird named Bird. Yeah.
When was this?
I was a kid, and actually, so I had a bird named Bird, but before he was Bird, he was Boy Bird, because there was a girl bird who unfortunately flew into a fan. It was really traumatic.
Oh no.
But at some point in their in first getting them, they were named Farad and Shirin after a folk tale from Afghanistan about these two lovers named Farad and Shirin. But it just got to be so much work calling them Farad and Shirin that we just ended up calling them Boy Bird and Girl Bird. And after there was no girl bird, it just ended up being Bird.
Just Bird. Oh man, that's sad. Poor girl Bird.
Yeah.
So okay, yeah. So Bird for short. Boy Bird with full name. Okay.
Exactly.
Very good. Okay, so I got lucky and I got that one right. And the other two statements, you're colorblind or you're a vegetarian. And here, honestly, I'm just going to go based on probability, and I'm just going to say that you are a vegetarian.
Really? Do I seem like a vegetarian?
I know many vegetarians of many different personalities and so.
Well, unfortunately, no. I'm not a vegetarian. I should be, though.
You are colorblind.
I'm colorblind, yeah.
I've never met anybody who's colorblind.
Really?
Wow. Yeah, no. Okay. So, I mean, I'll just have to ask all the like stupid questions, like what's it like? Like, like
So I I'm not exactly sure what it's like to be like color normal or whatever
Sure.
that means, but from what I've seen and like the way I describe it with other people, it's just there's a lot of brown in my life, a
Huh.
lot of blue, a lot of like just white and blacks, but everything else is kind of a shade of those things. And so my world is really colorful. It's just if you ended up seeing with my eyes, you'd say, that's really dull.
Wow. So yeah, I mean, and I've had this conversation before with other people. Like, how do we know that what I think is red looks the same to you, right? Like, we just agreed to call this color red, but the only
Yeah.
way we could really check is if I went into your brain and if I would see with your eyes. But for you, so you know, like, how do you even find out that you're colorblind? Colorblind. You know what I
So
mean?
I
Like,
Yeah, for me, I think the way I discovered it, I like had no clue, and it like really is not a very like big impairment in my life. But the way I found out was that my fourth grade art teacher really was mad at me for a lot. Like she just like couldn't stand that I like couldn't figure out what colors everyone else was using, and I was just confused because I was like, this is the same color. Like I am using these things. I recently did a paint by numbers with my friend for her birthday and everything was kind of like a shade of peach and some were browns and some were peaches, so there's like this huge range for her, but for me I just kept on using the wrong colors because they all kind of looked pretty similar.
right.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that's cool, I guess. I mean, I'm glad to know that it's not a big like impairment in your life. It's just like,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think it's mostly just like a kind of a party trick now. Whenever I tell someone, they're like, wait, so what color is this? And then I tell them and they're like, oh, so you can see that one.
Wow. Okay. So, all right. You're the first person that I've met who's colorblind, and thank you for your patience in explaining it to me. So that means you're not a vegetarian.
Mhm.
My wife is vegan, and
Really?
I am sort of like vegan by proxy,
Hmm.
but actually that's most of them vegetarian because I do eat dairy and eggs. But it's a little hard when I go back to Costa Rica, and that being vegetarian is not quite as widespread. So you're more limited in what you can eat, I suppose. But okay, so Seare, you win this round of two truths and a lie.
Score.
Very good. Congrats. Okay. Well, you know what? We'll send you an MYS T-shirt as a trophy.
Oh, excellent.
Very cool. Okay. Um, now we have another segment here called "What Are You Into?" And I would love
Mhm.
to hear, besides math and
Yeah.
STEM, what are you into? You know that's not directly related to your work.
Yeah. This one I actually want to be directly related to my work. I love cooking.
Mm.
I also, just to say why I want it directly related to my work, I've always had the dream of like making this installation experience where you walk in and you have like food with you and you pair that with music. I don't know, it's just like a wild fantasy of mine because I love food, I love cooking, and I think that that would be like the most amazing experience for me, and I want others to have that. Other than cooking, I love hiking, and I love reading as well.
Yeah, yeah. You could combine all three of those.
Oh
Go,
yeah,
go on a hike while you read a good book and eat something.
exactly.
But have you tried to describe music using words that you would use to describe food?
Hmm. I
Like
honestly, I think.
what makes music spicy or sweet or sour or I don't know, hot, cold, right?
Right. I think for me, I would I would be most inclined to like talk about texture. Like, like when you eat octopus, that really reminds me of like Takemitsu's music, for instance. Like you bite into it and there's like a splash of flavor, but the texture of it is like kind of chewy. There are these chords that are just like really biting, but at the same time, the whole thing is really squishy and it's a whole experience to like take it in. Um, and it's like, yeah, I think that the texture of eating food and like the textures of sound as they come into your ear, it's like a really similar experience.
Yeah, I think that's really fascinating. I think you're up to something there. I would totally go to some kind of installation, performance, concert experience that
Hmm.
explores that.
Oh
That's
yeah,
very good.
totally.
Very good.
I'll definitely send you an invite with some food and some music.
There you go. There you go. I don't know. I'm thinking now, in the world of COVID remote performances, if there's a way to explore that also, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Now you got my cogs going. Creative.
exactly.
Cool. Okay. And it's so good to spend time outside and go for a hike, and I mean, especially when we're forced to spend so much time in front of our computers these days.
Exactly.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, it's also true before pandemic times, I guess, but more even more so now.
Hmm.
It's good for the soul.
It really is. I had the a really great opportunity to go um, with a friend across the country. We ended up in LA to drop him off. He's studying at USC. And so we went all the way from Bloomington, Indiana, down to Texas and across the Southwest. And just I camped the whole way. So we were just in a car and camping in a tent. And
Wow.
it was, I think if I didn't have that experience, I definitely would not have been able to make it in this tiny apartment. I'm still dreaming about the desert.
When was this?
This was this past summer. It was in the middle of August. I had just moved here a little bit ago, and to Bloomington, that is. And he picked me up. He's from New Jersey, so he drove over to Bloomington, and we head over, and his car had no AC. So we were driving all the way through the desert with no AC. It was like 105 degrees every day. But there's something really magical about that. I think we might have been halfway hysterical, but it was just amazing. Such a beautiful.
So this happened less than a year ago. So it's already like pandemic stuff going on, and you're
Exactly, yeah.
wow. How long did it take the whole from when you guys left Bloomington to you getting to LA?
It took a week and a half about. Yeah.
I mean, man, you were going then.
We were definitely going. We had a deadline to get there, but we made sure to stop and see as much as we could along the way.
Wow, what an experience! You know, I lived in New Orleans before I moved to Portland with
Really?
my wife, and this was in 2016. We drove from New Orleans to Atlanta because that's where her family lives, and that's where we are right now, actually.
Mhm.
And then from Georgia, we drove all the way to Portland. We took like maybe 10 days to do it.
Mhm.
We sort of wanted to sort of take our time and, visit places. We didn't have our daughter yet, so just the two of us and our two dogs.
Yeah.
But after doing that, after having experienced that, I am convinced that everybody should experience traveling from coast to coast, or like that sort of like exploration of, because I really didn't know. Like I knew it in my head, in my brain, but I didn't quite
Yeah.
understand it in my heart, the vastness of this country,
Yeah.
right? What were some of your takeaways after? I mean, it's wow, no AC. That's that's
It,
intense.
exactly that. I think it just didn't dawn on me how huge this country is. Like, you can get from one side of France to the other, I'm sure, in a day, but this country is just enormous, and so much of it is entirely empty and arid and like really inhospitable. There was this one place that we camped out. It was right beside this really old, apparently, according to the person who uh, got us a plot of land to camp there for the night. He said this juniper tree was like something around 200 years old, And just looking at that and seeing that there was nothing else around, it must be such a lonely and like wild existence for a juniper tree to sit there for 200 years and see so much time pass, and then landscape around it really pretty much stay the same. It puts into perspective, I think, the impact that we have, just on things in general. Like we can have an impact on each other and maybe locally on the world, but really there are things that are much greater than us, like that juniper tree sitting there for 200 years and just watching the weather happen around it.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so we're getting to the end. I mean, time has flown, but a couple more things. We have a segment called Sound Advice, and what I want to ask you. I mean, you're so young. You're in grad school, but if you could travel back in time, and if you could give yourself advice when you were, say, in high school, what advice would that be?
I think the biggest thing I tell myself from high school is just to absorb things. At this point, I really have an open mind. At least I hope I do, and I'm striving to have one when I listen to music. But back then, I thought that there was something like good music, like that could be defined, and that I would definitely like take my iPod that I had back then and say, you need to download new stuff you've never heard. You need to just listen to everything.
Yes.
Like artists you don't know, artists you feel like you wouldn't ever connect to, you need to listen to them rather than these people who you think you'd like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's excellent advice, actually. And I encourage all MYS students watching to do just that. We talk about it sometimes. It's just important to open your doors, open your ears to as many sounds as you can. And you don't have to like it all, right?
Right.
But just really listen, and maybe if you don't like it, ask yourself, why is this not clicking with me? Like, try to put words to that. I think that's really great. Good. Okay. Seare, it's been such a pleasure talking with you. And
Likewise.
like I told you earlier, we are so excited to play your music in the coming months. So thank you so much for taking the time to be in the MYS Virtual Hangout number 57.
Thanks so much for inviting
talking
me.
with you. And we'll be in touch.
Perfect. Sounds great.
And as always, thank you for watching. Please join me next week, Thursday, October 29th, for a very special virtual hangout with Ricardo Gallardo from Tambuco Percussion Ensemble. Tambuco is going to be performing a virtual concert on November 8th with Friends of Chamber Music. So we're very excited to talk with Ricardo, and very thankful to Friends of Chamber Music for allowing us the opportunity to speak with him on behalf of Tambuco Percussion Ensemble. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you next Thursday.